Hi, and welcome back to my little channel. Today, I wanted to talk about something that is really personal to me. I'm an oversharer kind of by nature. I talk about this with a lot of people. So it's personal, but I'm used to talking about it. And it's also something that I think it took me a little bit to feel comfortable with, maybe personally, even admitting it or realizing it to myself. But then also, as you get older, I think the stuff that you're insecure about or that you're worried says something about you, it feels easier to admit it, again, both to yourself and also to other people. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned over my kind of entrepreneurial journey of starting my magazine and then my community group is just how many other people feel the same, worry about the same thing, are kind of just very similar to whatever is going on in your head or heart or brain that can feel so crazy or isolating or almost this sort of stuff that makes you think no one else in the world could feel this way, possibly. That's kind of the thing I think often that actually a lot of people do feel and are feeling. And by putting words to it and admitting it and saying it out loud, it's incredibly empowering for the person saying it, but also it's almost as if a gift we can give to each other, which, not to sound really Pollyanna or really corny about it, feels like a great gift for the universe, but also really especially women. I think it's hard to be a woman in lots of different ways, especially when you have young kids. It's isolating, it's tiring, and you can feel like you are totally alone in every way. And so it feels like a kindness or good karma, putting it out there. So that's my little Oprah couch moment spiel, but wanted to explain it a little. So what I wanted to share was how lonely I felt in the past few years and how I think it all combines with why it is so hard to make adult friends in your 30s and 40s. I mentioned it again in maybe my introduction video where I explained who I am, why I'm here, what I'm going to be talking about. I think for me, and then again, can only guess and assume a lot of other people, part of the thing is we thought we would become adults, become grown-ups, have children, and meet mom friends, right? Kids necessitate a lot of routine changes, new activities, new things, new places. You're meeting new people constantly. And I would say before I had children, that was maybe one of the biggest misconceptions or things I believe that didn't come true, was just assuming I would be placed into these situations where there would be other women, similar age, similar whatever, going through something so similar that would instantly magically become my friends. When you say it out loud, it sounds a little silly or trusting the universe too much or something, but I just did not question it at all. It was an assumption I had and something that, made it less scary or less worrisome, I suppose, while trying to think about that next stage of adulthood. So for me, that wasn't exactly the case. When it comes to why it's so hard to make friends as an adult in your 30s and 40s, I think it comes down to three major things. Number one is location. Number two is kids, which is kind of counterintuitive, but I'll explain that. And number three is actually related to the stars and planetary progressions. Sounds a little bit woo-woo, but you're going to want to stick around, hear me out. I think it'll resonate a lot with you. When you're in your 30s and 40s, you're often, perhaps, you're in a different actual physical location than where you had formative friendships, where you grew up. This is my case, so it's very specific, but I do think there's a lot of women in my orbit who are similar. If you went to college somewhere far from your hometown and then you landed up somewhere that was neither of those places, those two big physical geographic locations where you met friends who were so important to you in that stage of your life, growing up, making yourself into the person you're going to become, you're gone from a lot of those people. I am jealous of, curious about people who live in the same spot, either or both, where you grew up or where you went to school, how that feels. It's not my story, so I don't know or can't imagine. I'm sure there's all kinds of annoying parts about that too when you're surrounded by people that have known you for a really long time. But that to me was maybe the first kind of aha, unlock moment of why it was so hard to make friends. You were kind of going in brand new in a way, fresh. You don't have any roots, which can be such a good thing, but it can also be really hard for meeting people, especially if, like me, you think it's the case for most people or everyone, and then you get to a place and realize it's not. People are different. We all have different stories. And if you're in an area where people did grow up there, they have family, they have sisters, they have sister-in-laws, they have a built-in network or community that they're able to access and meet new friends and meet new people that you don't. Unless perhaps you're really outgoing, and please let me know if this is you. I want to learn from you. Unless you're really outgoing, that can feel so impenetrable, so hard to break into these cliques or groups that have already formed. Maybe they formed decades ago. They know each other's backstories and histories and inside jokes and everything, and you're brand new. I remind myself when I have the wherewithal or the mental strength that probably seems one way from the outside, and I'm sure when you're in there, maybe you're so hungry for someone new to come in. You're bored of the same old people. It can be frustrating, I'm sure, for everyone around you to know all of those backstories and histories and to have known you at 16 and 18 and 25 and whatnot. But as the person looking in and kind of like peering at the metaphorical party that you weren't invited to, it can feel isolating and intimidating. The second thing that I think is bigger than I realized, and it's weirdly kind of a total flip-flop from what I was expecting, was kids, right? I had children, maybe you had children, and like me, you assume you'll meet mom friends. It'll be so easy, so organic. You'll drop your kids off at school, you'll go get coffees, you'll have play dates, all those things. And in my experience, it's not that. It's much harder. And there's a lot of other factors at play. You have young children, kids can have just totally different routines. If you're doing other things beyond mothering and all of the logistics of mothering, a lot of that's actually impossible. I don't know what I was thinking before I had kids. That fascinates me on its own, to try to think back what pre-kids, pre-marriage me assumed it would look like. I don't remember. And that is crazy. I don't know if you've ever thought about that too, but what did you think? Did you think you'd work? Did you think you wouldn't work? Where do you think you live? I don't even know what I thought. But when you're in it and you start to realize it's actually kind of hard to do the morning rush and getting people dressed and ready to go. If it's summertime, sunscreen on, you're packing lunches, you're getting people to use the bathroom, you're doing all brushing hair. You can't even talk about brushing hair. You're doing all these things. By the time you finally drop off, more often than not, you're rushing back to an office or to your home office to start working and getting on meetings. The time to just casually grab a coffee or have a meal doesn't really exist. I'm not sure why I thought that would happen, but it didn't really. Also, in the same kind of breath, that busyness, that this time of life is so busy, I think I found it was very hard to carve out extra time for play dates or for getting together in the weekends or whatnot. It's a full-on day. And then when you're done, you either want to fall into your bed at the end of the night, or you just want to sit quietly with your partner. Or if it's your kids, you might just want to be with them. I don't know. This is, again, super personal because it's about me as a person, who I am, what my personality type is. But I wanted to share some of the things that I've been thinking about and had been thinking about as to how I got to this point of feeling so lonely. There's also a conclusion to this, kind of what I did about it. When I finally was able to admit it to the universe, to myself, to my husband, that I was lonely, and what I did and what I think is really helpful, and maybe some suggestions for how you can find your community. But the number 3 thing that I wanted to talk about is maybe a little bit woo-woo for some people, maybe not. But for me, it made total sense. I love a little bit of astrology. I like having my chart read. And the period of ages 36 to 44, peaking at age 42, I'm not an astrologer, so I'll say all this a little bit wrong. Your chart, there's like all these transits happening of planets moving around, crossing each other. The lines, the magnets, whatever's happening up there, it's kind of going crazy, is how I took the advice from my last chart reading to be. It's what we have thought of, heard of forever as midlife, and why midlife crises were a thing. 36 to 44, something is going on in the cosmos that affects you. I should double check and try to fact check the numbers on this. But the woman who does my chart was also explaining that the way, I'm so not an expert here, the way that the transits work, they kind of repeat themselves in different cycles. And the last time that whatever is happening in middle age, so sad, and middle age happened was when kind of sometime in your early 20s. So when you start to hit your late 30s, it's happening again. And it's one of the first times since your early 20s that you're really reevaluating values and what you care about, what matters to you, what drives you forward, all of those big, huge, important things that really led a lot of your direction for what you wanted to do with your life, what you believed in, what you want to do in your spare time, where you want to live, the things that define you as a person and how you kind of pilot your ship, right? Those were fairly constant from your early 20s, let's say when you graduated college, and then they start to change. Hearing this blew my mind, and it also made me feel so sane in a great way that I think is, for me, the best part of astrology or having your chart read. When you have someone explain something and you're able to kind of think, oh my goodness, thank gosh, it's not just me and I'm not going insane, literally going insane, having a mental breakdown, something's wrong. If it's not that, it's kind of normal and probably everyone around you is thinking the same thing. I've mentioned my women's group a few times. This is a group of women similar to me, around the same ages, and everyone was kind of feeling it. And I think that's why we all came together, why this group was made. When you realize you're looking for something that you kind of can't verbalize and you don't know what it is and what does that mean? Am I going crazy? And especially when it's stuff about who you are and what you value, it feels like you're crazy, that there are these things you've worked so hard for, prioritized so much, cared about, and then to question that makes it seem as if perhaps you didn't know yourself at all or that you wasted time. It just can feel really soul quaking is a word I end up using more than I probably should, but that's how it felt for me. So I think that's almost the third part of why it's so hard at this stage of life, mid 30s to your 40s. I don't know. We'll see if it keeps going for me. Why it makes it so hard to find friends is because this version of you that you knew really well before, had your hobbies and life and stuff organized around, is changing. So then it stands to reason you're confused in some way about who your friends even should be, because people who you might have been really drawn to or liked previously, and meaning in a new way, if you'd met this same person 10 years ago, it could have been a different story. Best friend for life, the person you did everything with, whatever. And now something just doesn't quite click the same way or feel the same. If maybe you're one of those people who lives in your hometown, I wonder if that happens with old friends. If you had this group of people and then it starts to feel like you had a closet of clothes and nothing quite fits the same or something. If just as you change what you're drawn to, who you're drawn to, what you want to talk about, what you want to do in your spare time, it makes sense that those things would be different, which again, makes you feel kind of crazy. And I think then makes it feel really hard to find friends because you don't even know what kind of friends you're looking for or what you want to do with them. So I don't know if that should make us feel better or worse, but I'm going to go back to my first point that I think it's just so helpful to know if any of that did resonate with you, you're not alone and you're not crazy. And to just remind you as a friend to friend, as I reminded myself, it's not anything about you or that you are unpopular and horrible and no one likes you. It's not that. We can all feel that in our worst moments, which is insane, but it's not. It really is just so many factors working against us, stacked up against us to make finding friends hard, which feels especially cruel if you were also a young mom and thought that it would be so easy. You thought something was going to be super simple and it's actually super hard, and that isn't fair of the universe. Okay, so the payoff, the what did I do? I think payoff is really the right word here, but When I realized that moment, I can still remember actually very clearly when I had my aha, comfortable enough to say it out loud, slash have a mini breakdown. I was actually in this closet, and I just kind of lost it and cried a lot. It hit me in a wave. And that's always a bit weird or unsettling or frustrating or fill in the blank with 100 different ways to describe your feelings. But I remember it also feeling so confusing because I couldn't figure out what word to put with it. Saying lonely felt very strange for two different reasons. One, we are still coming out of post-COVID, and this was even a few years ago. So there is so much coverage on the loneliness epidemic. This idea that as a culture, as a country, we're all very lonely. There's a lot of isolation. And then, of course, you have reporting on why that is so detrimental for your health, for your mental well-being, all these things. So it's a term that we're really used to. It's kind of saturated our headspaces, the media landscape everywhere. But it felt weird or wrong or selfish, honestly, right, to try to claim it a bit because that's so not me. The people we talk about a lot are the elderly, or people who live alone, or people who maybe live alone and then work remotely. So the days would go by that they didn't see anybody else or hug and get that oxytocin burst from feeling the pressure of someone hugging your body or whatever. And that's not me. I live with my partner. I have two small children. I work remote, but I do go into my office. I see people on Zoom calls all day. I do drop off, as mentioned. I go to the gym. There's a lot of reasons and places where I'm interacting with other human beings, including random moments with friends. The second reason kind of goes to the idea of having children. When you have children, you are wanted and needed so much. You're so in demand. You're so wanted to either the physical stuff of cuddling and holding and touching and laying in bed and all these things, but also just your time is needed. It's rare to be alone. How could you feel lonely, right? Because there's always someone either physically touching you somehow within 10 feet, 20 feet, and definitely within your house. And so it just definitionally seems hard to feel lonely. My husband also works from home, right? So we're together a lot. And that particular afternoon, when I had my little crying breakdown, he didn't understand. And it was that kind of crying breakdown where I'm not a pretty crier, period. And this day, especially, I think it's an ugly cry. I can still remember being like an adolescent and having just breakdowns where kind of you can't catch your breath. You're just like hiccuping almost. And so you are just have lost it somehow. That's kind of how it felt. Like not a pretty little cry, but really where you're like, am I having some sort of weird emotional attack? So he didn't get it. I even remember him saying, it's like, what are you talking about? Like we just saw the weekend prior or something. We walked over to our neighbor's house and had a meal and hung out. It was like, we see people. What are you talking about? In a confused way mixed with concern, which I think is a lovely way for a husband to be. Trying to explain it to him was so tricky. And it took me a bit to be able to put words to it too. I read something about emotional loneliness and that kind of clicked. Where I was like, oh, that's what it is. I'm not actually true blue, normal, everyday lonely or whatever. It's emotionally lonely. I miss people to talk to about the things that really matter to me. That's not my young children. It's kind of maybe my husband, but I sit in this camp where my husband is not my best friend. It was really figuring that out was a big part of this unlock of I needed my people to talk to about things with my kids that are annoying, things that are annoying about my husband, things that are confusing, weird, amazing about getting older and the relationship shift with your family, with your siblings, with old friends, fill in the blank, anything. And I didn't have that. And I couldn't find my people. And it just had, I think, been pressing on me little by little by little, and then kind of exploded. Which for me, again, I realized something about myself as I've gotten older. And I think it's true of a lot of people. So, and those are the kind of people I was looking for. Women who you're capable of so much and you're so strong and you're so smart and you're so busy and you're just doing. I feel like most of the time I have like a lightsaber and you're just popping stuff away. You're rolling, you can do so much. And the bad stuff or the frustrations just kind of pile on and you don't even realize it until you're sobbing in your closet, wondering what's wrong with you. And that there has to be some moment in between, but that's a different video or conversation for a different day. For me, this was just realizing that and saying, I have to fix this and find my people, find my community. And clearly it's not just going to appear. I've been waiting. So what am I supposed to do about that? I worked a lot with a coach on chatting this through too. And it was one of the best exercises she had me do, and kind of the unlock that I think she was trying to get me to, was that your community is your community. It can look 100 different ways. For me, I think I was really affected by pop culture and what pop culture made me think my community should look like. So I'm 40. I feel like Sex and the City was a big thing when I was in college and right after college. I blame a lot of it on that. This group of 4 women who was everything to each other and they talked about everything, right? And you see that with Friends. You see that with Real Housewives. You see that with Gossip. I don't even know. I feel like you can think of almost any Friends set. I understand it's television, and I understand too that beyond it just being fictional, that's a world in a movie or in a TV show that writers had to create, and you can't have random characters popping in and out. It doesn't make sense for a narrative if Carrie had a work friend and then she had, her smart lawyer friend, and then she had somebody she likes to shop with, and then there was that friend that she liked to text or chat with about sex things or whatever. They had to be one group. Totally get it. I guess I am mad about it, but I get it. That had just wedged itself into my subconscious and my brain more than I realized. So I was looking for that. A group of people, big or small, who could be everything and talk about everything with me. And also, I really thought they needed to be local, that I would see regularly, once every week, once every other week. You met up for your favorite brunch spot regularly enough, checked in, talked about stuff. Then remember all those reasons why it's so hard to make friends. That's crazy. We're asking for this thing that can barely exist. So the exercise was kind of writing down my community. For me, it meant this random hodgepodge of a couple people who were local that I liked seeing in person for brunches and breakfasts, old work colleagues that I still keep in touch with that I could see whenever I was in New York City. I have an old colleague who moved back to Australia, and we WhatsApp voice note each other. And I probably talk to her more that way than most of my other friends, all of my other friends, and it works really well for us. So it was making this list of who are my people and how do they fit in these different columns of sorts that blew my mind open. So again, if this makes any sense to you and you don't think I'm just a crazy person, I would do that exact same thing. Think about who your current people are and just list them out. Look at them. You can look in categories. That was helpful for me because it just redefined the idea of what my community should be. And it also was permission from someone else to believe, realize, accept your community can be all these different people that aren't in community with each other. Maybe they don't even know each other. They don't have to even like each other. I was searching for one big friend group, and that wasn't my thing, and it doesn't have to be my thing, and I don't need it to be my thing. So that was incredibly important. And then that crying moment in the closet led me to my current business, which is a private women's membership group. Seeing that list written out made me realize that people that I wanted to staunch that emotional loneliness could be anywhere, and that there were probably other women out there like it. So I kind of put pen to paper, started thinking about what it would look like, understanding how to find friends. Was a little bit tricky, but it just felt like, here's a problem. There has to be a solution. I'm going to figure it out. The work itself has been amazing and has taught me a lot, but also the women I've met are absolutely who I wanted. And it sounds cheesy as all get out, but over the last year of developing and working and building that group and meeting the people in the group, it's been exactly what I needed to fill that emotional loneliness. People I can talk to about things that I'm curious about, what it feels like to be running a business while also working, while also having children. The stuff that I couldn't find, I was unable to find either locally or casting about wherever. You just have to cast my net wider, and I found it. And it's been amazing in so many ways. So this was like peppered with 100 different random thoughts and feelings from what I experienced and went through. I hope some of it's helpful. like I said, to just not feel alone or crazy, but that also maybe there are some good little tips in there about how to reframe what you're looking for and just remind yourself why it's so hard in the first place to find friends. Because when we can kind of admit that and then reframe what we're looking for anyway with our community, I think that is the perfect two-step thing to finding your people. So I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, comment down below. If you want to learn more about my women's group, you can come and see what we're all about, what it is at joindiana.com, and stay subscribed so we can chat more soon. Bye.